From the fantasy armchair, it is the fantasy TyRant. Hey there, fellow fantasy football freaks. Welcome back to the fantasy armchair. Another week down, so we move on past week 10 and move on to week 11. As you can see here, I'm at the Everglades National Park in Florida. Hopefully I can get through this broadcast before getting eaten by a gator or ass raped by a hillbilly. Probably the latter is most likely. So let's move on quick. Just want to thank you all for your support as always. Hit like if you like. We need 10% likes, so hit the thumbs up, do your part, help me, so I can continue to help you. And in that same vein, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, go ahead and do so now. I'll wait. It's taking you so long, it's just a button right there. Thank you, I appreciate it. If we get to 700 subscribers before the end of the month, I'm going to do something really awesome for you guys for the holidays. And of course, if you want your one-on-one advice, exclusive content, entries into giveaways, and your own pocket guru to answer your questions anytime you want, sign up with me on Patreon. You'll find a link down there in the description. But anyway, enough business, let's get to the reason you're here. Because you know what that music means? That's right, it's time for my top 10 waiver wire picks for week 11. Number 10, D'Onta Foreman. As I predicted a week ago, it would be Foreman who would end up being the lead back for the Titans. Not Peterson, not McNichols, but Foreman. I actually really like this guy, and have since I've seen him in the NFL. He can straight ball, and he's a quick little son of a gun. What the hell was that? Little son of a gun? Did I just turn into an old prospector or something?
Oh, peaches!
He outtouched Peterson 13-9 this past Sunday, so he's gaining more trust from the coaches. AP is still getting more goal line touches, but that could change as the younger, more explosive back is more and more assimilated into the offense. This is more of a lottery ticket kind of stash because I see the potential in this kid. He's not King Henry, but he can hold his own. He just needs a chance to shine, and he might have it here. Keep an eye on him, and if you have the room, snatch him up and stash him. Number 9, Tyler Conklin. If you tuned in Sunday morning on the Tinker Stinker Power Hour, you'd have seen that I picked Conklin as my tight end sleeper of the week. Turned out to be a good pick, as he was the tight end 4 on the week. In fact, he's been the tight end 4 over the past 3 weeks. Despite all the mouths to feed in Minnesota, Conklin has been consistent. When Irv Smith went down, the Vikings simply filled that empty spot with the Conk and haven't looked back. That's right, I called him the Conk. And now so will you, because it's an awesome nickname. If you've been streaming tight ends at this point in the season, you might be able to pick up Conklin and just start him rest of season because it looks like the Vikings plan to include him as a major part of their offense. The Vikings offense has been downright potent. I knew that Cousins was going to be a top 10 caliber QB, and he has been this year, and that's benefited everyone on the team, including the Conk. Love the nickname, love the player, and you'll love the fantasy points he gets for you. Lots of love here, so get on it. Pick up the Conk. Number 8, Jamal Agnew. Speaking of deep sleepers I dropped on the Sunday morning show, rookie QBs tend to rely on 2 guys in the passing game, their tight end and their chosen go-to wide receiver. Since trading for Dan Arnold, Trevor Lawrence has established a connection with the tight end, so check. But his chosen wide receiver wasn't quite clear. Was it going to be Shenault or was it going to be Marvin Jones? Turns out it's neither. His chosen guy seems to be the return specialist, Jamal Agnew, who's got a claim to fame as the record holder for the longest missed field goal return for 109 yards in week 3 of this season. The 5th round selection has never really been anything more than a special teams guy until this season, where he's become a solid gadget type player. Now this past game, he didn't catch any of his 5 targets, but instead did his work in the running game, going for 3 carries for 79 yards and a touchdown. Alright, fine. Practically all of his production came off a single 70-yard touchdown run, but up until last week, in the 4 games preceding, Agnew averaged over 7 targets per game, and he scored over 12 fantasy points per game on average since week 5. I bet, like everyone else, you thought Shenault was going to be the guy. But you know what?
It doesn't matter what you think!
What matters is what Lawrence thinks, and he's had Agnew on his mind, so he should be on your team. Get him now. Number 7, Justin Fields. Coming off the bye, Justin Fields is available in 75% of leagues. And just before the bye, he started putting it together in this offense. It seems he's finally gelled and made connections with some players. Unfortunately for many, Allen Robinson is not one of them. Remember what I said about Trevor Lawrence and Jamal Agnew? Yeah, I'll be talking more about Fields guy later on. Point is, while he's been as helpful to A-Rob's career as Jennifer Lopez has been to Ben Affleck's, he's got superstar potential, not just in the NFL, but in fantasy as well. He does it both through the air and with his legs. Remember last year when Jalen Hurts started putting together some great fantasy point games over the home stretch of the season? We could see the same thing here at Fields. He averaged 10 completed yards through the air per attempt in Week 9, and over 50 yards rushing per week over the past few weeks. As he continues to improve, so will his fantasy output. This is another sleeper stash for the playoffs, but if need be, he can be used as a viable option from here on out, at least in 2 quarterback or superflex leagues. Pick him up if you have need at the position. Number 6, Robbie Anderson. Yeah, he's been an absolute dud most of the season. He went from being an off-season darling to being an absolute bum and owned in less than 40% of leagues. So why am I putting him in my top 10 waiver wire pickups? 2 words: Cam Newton. This is a total game changer for the Panthers. No, he's not much more prolific a passer than Sam Darnold, but he's got the experience and knows how to connect with talented receivers. Something Darnold couldn't do if he were paid millions of dollars. Oh wait, he is, and he still can't do it. At least Cam Newton can work through his progressions and hit the open guy. And we've seen Robbie Anderson put it together, just not so much this season. But I think a change at the helm is just a shot in the arm this otherwise anemic offense needed. That and the return of their star running back, Christian McCaffrey. All of this will help the offense run more smoothly and get Robbie Anderson back on track. He had his highest fantasy point total of the season this past week, and I think he could be in line for a lot more work as the offense is running better under Cam. If you have room, both in your reserves and in your heart for forgiveness, pick up Mr. Anderson. Number 5, Bryan Edwards. The true beneficiary of Ruggs' departure from the Raiders offense is Bryan Edwards. Renfrow has been solid, and that will continue. And Djax is Djax. 1 or 2 long bombs per game, and you hope for the best. But Edwards is the true, consistent downfield threat, and I think a more talented one than Ruggs personally. Yeah, that's what I think.
Big whoop, wanna fight about it?
He's been getting a consistent flow of 4 targets per game since week 4, other than one game where he had 6 targets. No, that doesn't exactly get my nips hard. But with a touchdown and an average of 15 fantasy points in 2 of the last 3 games, I see Edwards becoming the new Ruggs in this offense. No, he's not as quick, but he can get downfield pretty well and is an expert route runner. I think he's more talented than Renfrow and is starting to become another favorite target for Carr. This pickup isn't about what the guy's done, so much as what I think he's capable of rest of season. He's got a pretty good schedule for running backs for the remainder of the season, and he's gaining more and more trust from his quarterback while getting more workload in the offense. Get him before his breakout game because it's coming soon. Don't wait until it's too late. Get his ass now. Number 4, Dan Arnold. I had him as an honorable mention last week, but this week he's made it to the list. Yeah! Alright, settle down. After a week to acclimate to the offense, Dan Arnold has been a consistent target for Trevor Lawrence and a consistent fantasy asset in the process. He's had at least 7 targets in the last 3 weeks, putting up 3 of his 4 best weeks of the season in that span. He had his first double-digit target game of his career this past Sunday, catching 5 balls for 67 yards and a 2-point conversion. He's scoring points without touchdowns, as he hasn't caught a touchdown pass all season. Touchdowns would be icing on the cake with this guy, as he's been solid without them. Definitely worth a look if you need help at the tight end position. Get him this week, because when he has his huge week with a touchdown, it's gonna be too late. Number 3, Darnell Mooney. I told you earlier that Justin Fields is improving, and he's picked this guy. Certainly hasn't been A-Rob, and while his connection with Cole Kmet is increasing, it's been Darnell Mooney who shares a bond with Fields. Fields even said in an interview that he took less first-team reps in preseason, so he didn't connect with A-Rob. Instead, it was Mooney who he got his reps with, and it was Mooney that became his guy. It's fairly obvious. He has the top target share on the team, most catches, most receiving touchdowns, and so on. I said it once, and I'll say it again. He's been the boner to Justin Fields' Mike Seaver as Fields works through his growing pains. For as much as I say boner on my show, I'm surprised I haven't been approached by Viagra asking to be a sponsor. Oh well, I told you Mooney was money, and in week 9, he put up over 20 fantasy points. That'll become closer to the norm than the exception as time goes on. And in fact, he's averaged over 13 fantasy points in the past 6 weeks. That's at least good enough for consistent flex consideration, even in 10-team leagues. As the season progresses, so will Justin Fields, and so will Darnell Mooney's numbers. He should be owned in almost all leagues and formats, so get Darnell money on your squad now. Number 2, Rashad Bateman. He was in this exact spot last week, but still available in over 50% of leagues. Well, that's going to change this week, so if he's available in your league, it's now or never. He's gotten better and better every week since his NFL debut in Week 6. His targets, catches, and production have only increased, and he had his NFL career records in all 3 this past week. He's been starting to adjust to the NFL and really getting in good with his teammates and the offensive scheme. He led the team in production through the air, outproducing Marquise Brown, Sammy Watkins, and Mark Andrews. We all knew this was coming, so why is he only owned in half the leagues? That's fucking stupid. I mean, seriously, that's dumb, like Ernest P. World dumb, know what I mean? Bateman could be a league-winning pickup at wide receiver, and at this rate, he'll have wide receiver 2 upside week to week, and approaching the playoff push, that's a damn good thing to have. Now there's a plethora of flex-level wide receivers with upside, I know, I get it, but there's something special about Bateman, and if he's starting to curry favor from Lamar Jackson over Hollywood and Mandrews, it shouldn't be that shocking if he becomes a valuable piece for elite fantasy teams the remainder of the season. Want to be one of those teams? Then get Bateman or get left behind. The only reason he isn't the number 1 pickup this week is because he isn't a running back, and a valuable running back is a more rare commodity. And my number 1 waiver wire pickup for week 11 is Ramondre Stevenson. I had him in the top 10 last week, but much lower on the list at number 9. If you saw his performances last week, you know why he skyrocketed to the top spot. His potential was always there, as I said time and time again. He was the top producing running back in preseason, and that came from out of nowhere, like an RKO from Randy Orton. But then fumbling issues early in the season had him in Belichick's doghouse, so we thought that he'd been buried like any wrestler that Randy Orton didn't like. Alright, so now we're getting into wrestling terminology that the casual fan may not understand. Being buried means having your momentum taken away and spotlight shut down by someone who has the chops to do so because they just didn't like you or they just suck at putting people over. Like, making them look good. There are many ways of doing this, and Orton was a master. Well, him and John Cena. Anyway, back to fantasy football. Despite Belichick's attempts to bury Stevenson in the depth chart, injury made it necessary to give this kid a chance. And he seems to have overcome his fumbleitis. But let's talk about last week's performance, shall we? Dude went the fuck off. 20 carries, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, adding in 4 receptions for 14 yards. That was good enough for RB2 for week 10 with 27.4 fantasy points against the Cleveland Browns, who'd only given up the 7th least fantasy points to running backs. If he could continue to have a consistent workload in this offense, and there's nothing telling me that he can't or won't, Stevenson could be on a lot of championship teams this season. So be the apex predator of your league and pick up Ramondre Stevenson. Spend your fab, use your top waiver priority, do what you need to get him on your squad, and be the one standing tall in your league at the end of the season. Well, that's it for the top 10. I've got some honorable mentions here for you. Now, Elijah Moore is owned in like 51 or 52% of leagues, so he didn't quite make the cut. However, if he's available in your league, he sneaks in about the number 3 position thereabouts. Kendrick Bourne's production is too volatile right now for me to put him on the list, but if I start seeing some more consistency from him, I'll put him there. Same thing with Mac Jones. I gotta see more games over 20 points before I think about putting him on the list. Ray could be the new Juju in Pittsburgh. Alright, maybe only for as long as Big Ben's out, so that's why I don't have McLeod on the list. Saints receivers, same as last week. Too messy and random to want to pick any of them up. Wayne Gallman could be a thing with Cordero Patterson out. He always seems to make a surprisingly good fill-in play. Could be sneaky there. Evan Ingram could continue to see some good target share. That is, if the Giants receiving core is still all beat up. Speaking of which, Sterling Shepard may be back this week, so he might be worth a pickup. He's probably your number 11 on the list. Cole Kmet needs another solid week before I consider him for the top 10. Cam Newton? Not yet. And finally, DeAndre Carter. You know what? This might actually be the number 11. With Curtis Samuel likely out for the season, this is becoming the number 2 target for Heineke. If you wait another week for him, it might be too late. So do yourself a favor. If you have the room, don't put a waiver claim in for him. Just wait till the morning. Pick him up, and you'll be ahead of the curve. So there it is, ladies and gents. there's your Waiver Wire show. Hope you enjoy it. Hope that helps out. Get those waiver claims in tonight, and I'll be back tomorrow with the Hustler and the others for Fantasy News Today. And a little bit later, you'll be able to catch me for Mixed Notes. Coming back after a week hiatus. Hopefully we get some more people in there. You remember that's happening. Anyway, don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to hit subscribe, because we need 700 subscribers before the end of the month if you want that holiday treat. And of course, sign up with me on Patreon. Links down there in the description. If you want your one-on-one weekly fantasy advice, trade help, roster counseling, you want to know what to have for dinner that night, whatever you want, it's all good. Anyway, thank you, of course, as always, for your continued viewership and your support. And I'll be back tomorrow for the news and for Mixed Notes. So until then, I'm out. Peace.